I'm a clever and ambitious peasant who has just found a dead knight in full armor. Assuming I can learn to fight well enough, how good are my chances of bluffing my way into aristocratic society? I recognize that the nature and structure of knighthood evolved throughout history, so for the sake of argument let's place this in 1250s, although if anybody wants to discuss this with regards to another period of the Middle Ages, please do so. Likewise, I'm sure that said peasant isn't going to be able to pass themselves off as a high-ranking duke or count. But pretending to be some third-born son from a backwater province seeking a lord to fight under seems more plausible. Or is this doomed from the start, and should the peasant in question really just sell the armor? So there's some big roadblocks here for you, unfortunately. Wearing armor is a skill. We don't think about it because for most of us in our modern life, we just put on clothes and go. Even a modern soldier will, while carrying a heavy amount of gear, still have a relatively easy time putting it all on and moving around in it. Not the case for you, I'm afraid. Armor is heavy, it takes practice to move around in, much less fight in, and if you're staggering around carrying 60 pounds of steel or iron on your body, it's going to be very apparent to trained knights and men-at-arms that you don't know what you're doing. The armor probably won't fit. Armor was, in general, custom-made to the knight who commissions it. It would be made specifically to fit them, and to enable as much movement and protection as possible. Unless you have the exact proportions of your recently discovered dead knight, something isn't going to fit right, and that'll be a giveaway as well. You could potentially get around this by pretending to be a poorer country knight who outgrew his armor, but even that is going to raise some eyebrows. Imagine if you walk around today in a shirt that's 2 sizes too small for you, as an example. Learning to fight is going to be an issue as well. Who is going to train you? Depending on the time and location that you're living in, the expectation would be that you'd have learned the combative arts in your teenage years into your early 20s, while squiring for an older knight. You don't have the luxury of trundling up to the nearest castle and asking for sword fighting lessons. The alternative, hiring a tutor, is possible, although they're going to be in demand teaching young nobles as well, so you might struggle a bit there, and even then that's also going to raise eyebrows. Also, unless your dead knight had a large purse on him when he died, you're still a poor peasant, who is highly unlikely to have the money to afford tutelage. Language. If you're a peasant, you will sound almost nothing like knights and nobles do. There's a decent chance you won't even speak the same language, and if you do you'll sound like, well, a peasant. A knight was expected to be educated, and to be able to hold their own in conversation about complex topics of the day, political affairs, and so on. You're not going to be able to do any of this, and it will be noticed immediately. Mannerisms. As above, you're going to have the mannerisms of a peasant in a society where etiquette and behavior is incredibly important to the upper classes. You're almost certain to immediately give yourself away simply by not knowing who to greet, how to greet them, how to eat like a knight when invited to dinner with the local notables, even how you interact with members of the now lower classes, such as peasants who were your peers yesterday before you found the dead guy. Social networking. Knights weren't that common, and everyone knew other knights and notables. The lord you present yourself to might not know who the dead guy was, but someone in his court will, and inevitably someone is going to realize that you're wearing the armor and sigil of someone else. This will be, to put it mildly, a big problem. You can't afford it. Being a knight is very expensive. Even if you're not going to claim the former knight's household, which will not work, as the staff will of course know you're not their former employer, you still have to, at the very least, maintain your armor, which requires regular upkeep and repairs, weapons, which require regular upkeep and repairs, horse, which requires feeding, stabling, and shoeing, and some level of money to maintain the appearance that you are, in fact, wealthy. This is all very expensive, and unless you manage to find a mercenary company to hire you without training, your options are going to basically be limited to being a very well-armed highway bandit. Overall your chances aren't great, however. As another poster said, you have a much better chance of being honest, saying that you found the armor on a dead person and claimed it as your own, and then swearing to a lord as one of his men-at-arms, which are basically professional peasant soldiers of the day. The armor might still be taken away from you, depending on the lord, but chances are you'll at least be employed, and have a better overall life than you otherwise would working the fields or trying to pass yourself off as a knight. There's a highly accurate movie about this very problem that I recommend watching as well, 2001's A Knight's Tale.